Let me start with something a bit uncomfortable. If you've ever felt like everyone around you seems to be doing fine financially while you're quietly stressed about money, I have some news for you. The people around you almost certainly aren't doing fine either. They're just better at hiding it than you think. I've spent decades watching this, watching the gap between what people appear to have and what they actually have, and the gap in modern America has become enormous, bigger than anyone wants to admit, bigger than the news will tell you, bigger than the Instagram lifestyles suggest. The truth is that most Americans right now are not a little behind. They're catastrophically behind. The numbers I'm about to share with you are not exaggerations. They're not clickbait. They're not the work of some doom and gloom corner of the internet. They come from the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, major banks running their own surveys. The numbers are real, they're current, and they're worse than you probably realize. Why does this matter to you? Because if you've been quietly blaming yourself for not having it together, for not having more saved, for living a little tight, for carrying some debt, I want you to see what you're actually competing against. Because once you see the real numbers, you stop comparing yourself to the imaginary version of everybody else that you've built up in your head, and you start to understand that you're not behind, you're roughly average, and average in modern America is broke. Tonight I'm going to walk you through what's actually happening to American household finances in 2026, the numbers nobody talks about plainly, the reality underneath the appearances, and what these numbers actually mean for you and the people around you. Some of these will surprise you. Some will probably make you angry. All of them are true. Let's start with what should be the foundation of any healthy financial life: savings. 27% of American adults, over 1 in 4, have zero emergency savings. None. Not $500, not $100, nothing. And this is the highest level ever recorded. Read that again. More than 1 in 4 Americans in 2026 has not a single dollar set aside for an emergency. If the car breaks down, the answer is a credit card. If they get sick, the answer is debt. If they lose their job, the answer is something between a payday loan and panic. There is no buffer. There is no cushion. There is just the next paycheck and the hope that nothing goes wrong before it arrives. And it gets worse. 59% of Americans, almost 6 in 10, could not cover a single $1,000 emergency without going into debt. 6 in 10. The next time you're sitting in a meeting at work, or eating in a restaurant, or standing in line at the supermarket, look around. Most of the adults you can see almost certainly cannot handle a single unexpected $1,000 bill without borrowing money to do it. The personal savings rate in America has fallen to around 4.5% of income. The historical average is around 8.5%. So Americans are saving roughly half of what they used to save, even as the cost of everything has gone up dramatically. This isn't a small group of people in trouble. This is most of the country. The people you work with, the people you went to school with, the people who look successful on social media. Look around. Statistically, most of them are one bad week away from financial trouble. And almost none of them are going to tell you that openly. Now let's talk about the other side of the same problem, because while Americans aren't saving, they're carrying enormous amounts of debt. Total American household debt has hit a record $18.8 trillion. That number is so large it's almost meaningless. So let me break it down per family. The average American household now carries around $105,000 in total debt. Mortgages, car loans, student loans, credit cards, personal loans, medical bills. $105,000. The average. Not the worst case, not the outliers, the middle of the bell curve. Credit card debt alone has reached $1.3 trillion across the country, with the average household carrying somewhere around $6,700 on their cards. And credit card interest rates right now are running at an average of 21%. That means the average household with credit card debt is paying somewhere over $1,400 a year in interest alone, while the actual balance barely moves. That's not progress. That's a treadmill that costs you money to stay on. Most people walking the treadmill don't even realize they're on it. They make their minimum payments, they see their balance staying roughly the same, and they assume they're handling it. But interest is eating them alive in slow motion. Now think about what that means in real life. The average American household is paying over $1,000 a year just to stand still on their credit cards. That's $1,000 that didn't go to savings. That didn't go to retirement. That didn't go to investments. That just evaporated into the credit card industry's profits, year after year, while the household genuinely believed they were getting by. This is what being broke in modern America actually looks like. Not soup kitchens. Not visible poverty. People with jobs, with houses, with cars, with normal-looking lives, quietly paying interest on debt they can never actually escape from. Now here's the statistic that ties it all together, and it's probably the most shocking one on this list. Somewhere between 51 and 60% of Americans, depending on which survey you read, are living paycheck to paycheck. The most recent data from 2026 puts the number at around 53%. The estimates from major financial services firms put it even higher, with some studies showing close to 2/3 of Americans now in this category. What does paycheck to paycheck actually mean? It means that the entirety of one paycheck is spent before the next one arrives. There's nothing left over. If the next paycheck is delayed for any reason, a clerical error, a layoff, a health issue, anything, the household enters financial crisis almost immediately. And the truly uncomfortable part of this statistic is that it's not just lower-income workers. 40% of households earning over $100,000 a year also report living paycheck to paycheck. That's right. Even at six-figure incomes, 4 out of 10 American households are spending everything they bring in. Their cars are nicer, their houses are bigger, their bills are higher, but the math underneath is the same, nothing left over. This is the lifestyle inflation problem playing out at every income level. Americans don't seem to escape paycheck to paycheck by earning more, because earning more usually just means spending more. The treadmill speeds up, but nobody actually gets off it. For people born after 1990, the numbers are even worse. Around 67% of Gen Z and 63% of millennials report living paycheck to paycheck. So if you're under 40 and you're stressed about money, please understand, almost everyone your age is in exactly the same boat. You're not failing. The system you're operating inside is brutal. Let's talk about what's quietly waiting for all of these people at the end of their working lives, because if the present is bad, the future, for most Americans, is genuinely frightening. The average American approaching retirement has somewhere around $85,000 saved across all retirement accounts combined. That sounds like a lot until you understand what it actually buys you. A retirement of $85,000, withdrawn at the standard safe rate of about 4% a year, gives you roughly $3,400 a year of retirement income, less than $300 a month. That's it. That's what the average American has saved up to support the last 20 or 30 years of their life. Most retirees rely heavily on Social Security to fill the gap. Social Security pays the average retiree somewhere around $2,000 a month. Combined with the savings, the typical American retiree is trying to live on around $25,000 a year for the rest of their life, in an economy where the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is climbing toward $1,500 a month in much of the country. The math doesn't add up. Most Americans are walking, slowly, toward a retirement they cannot actually afford. And almost nobody is telling them this clearly. The financial industry sells them comforting illusions. Their employers handed them a 401k and called it a pension. The financial education they got in school covered nothing useful, so they keep moving toward retirement age, half aware that they're behind, fully unaware of just how badly. Around half of Americans over 55 have no retirement savings at all. Zero, not a small amount. Nothing. They will rely entirely on Social Security to live on in an economy where Social Security covers maybe 60% of what an average household actually needs. This isn't a future problem. It's already starting. The cohort of Americans now retiring with no real savings is the largest in history. Many of them will work into their 70s and beyond, not because they want to, but because they have to. Now you might be hearing these numbers and thinking, wait, this doesn't match what I see around me. The people around me seem fine. The cars in the driveways are nice. The vacations on Instagram look great. The houses look comfortable. How can things be this bad if everyone seems okay? The answer is uncomfortable, but important. The appearance of being okay and the reality of being okay are two completely different things. And modern Americans have become extraordinarily skilled at performing financial stability they don't actually have. The nice car in the driveway is almost always financed. The vacation on Instagram was charged to a credit card that hasn't been paid off. The renovated kitchen came out of home equity that the family is still paying interest on. The new clothes were bought on a buy now, pay later plan that's still active. The lifestyle that looks abundant is, in most cases, being purchased on credit and quietly drained by interest in the background. This is what's so corrosive about social media in the current economy. Everyone sees everyone else's curated, financed appearance of wealth and assumes it's evidence that they're somehow behind. They think everyone else has figured something out that I haven't. So they go out and finance their own version of the appearance, joining the same trap, often without ever realizing the trap exists. The truth is that most of the visibly successful lives you can see right now are being purchased on debt. And the people living those lives are often more stressed about money than you are. They just can't tell anyone, because admitting it would mean admitting the whole performance was hollow. This is the deepest reason the numbers matter. Once you see them, you stop measuring yourself against the appearances. You start measuring yourself against the reality. And the reality is that you're probably doing better than the average, even if it doesn't feel that way. So if most Americans are broke, who isn't? Because clearly somebody is doing well in this economy. Where is the money going, and who's holding it? The wealth distribution in America is more concentrated than at almost any point in modern history. The top 1% of Americans now hold around 32% of total household wealth. That's the highest concentration in 3 decades. The top 10% hold around 70% of all wealth. And the bottom 50% of Americans combined hold less than 3% of the country's total wealth. So while most Americans are watching their savings rates drop and their debt rise, a small slice of the country is quietly accumulating an ever larger share of the pie. This isn't conspiracy thinking. It's documented in Federal Reserve data, published every quarter, available to anyone who cares to look. But here's the part that doesn't get said enough. Some of the people doing well aren't billionaires or celebrities. They're ordinary people, teachers, engineers, accountants, nurses, who happen to develop a few quiet habits early and stuck with them for decades. They invested consistently. They bought homes they could actually afford. They avoided credit card debt. They didn't compete with the people around them for visible status. They let their money compound while everyone else's spent itself. These are the quietly wealthy I've talked about before. They don't look rich. They don't make news. They're not selling courses. They just understood, somewhere along the way, that the system rewards specific, consistent behaviors, and they did those behaviors patiently for 30 years. You can be one of them. The numbers I've just walked you through are bleak in the aggregate, but they're not a destiny for any individual. They're the average, and the average is created by people doing the things that create the average. Different behaviors produce different results. Always have. Always will. So what should you take away from all of this? Because data without meaning is just trivia. Here's what the numbers are actually telling you. First, you're not behind. If you have any emergency savings at all, you're ahead of 1 in 4 Americans. If you have $1,000 accessible without going into debt, you're ahead of 6 in 10. If you're not living paycheck to paycheck, you're ahead of more than half the country. The bar for being ahead in modern America is lower than almost anyone realizes. Second, the people who appear to be doing well around you are mostly performing. Stop comparing yourself to appearances. Compare yourself to outcomes. The neighbor with the new car who's 8 months behind on their mortgage isn't doing better than you. The coworker with the designer wardrobe who carries $7,000 on credit cards isn't doing better than you. The friend who takes the impressive vacations on layaway isn't doing better than you. Appearance is not outcome. Third, Small, consistent actions, taken now, put you ahead of nearly everyone. If you start setting aside something, anything, every month, you immediately move out of the bottom half of American savers. If you avoid carrying credit card debt, you immediately move out of the bottom group financially. If you contribute even modestly to a retirement account starting in your 20s or 30s, you move ahead of half of all Americans over 55. The bar isn't high. It just requires doing the boring thing consistently. Fourth, the system is not on your side. The financial industry profits from the average American being broke. They lend the savings of the few to the many at 21% interest. They sell financial products designed to extract small monthly fees forever. They market lifestyles you cannot afford and then offer to finance them. The default path of just doing what's around you leads mathematically to the numbers I just described. You don't have to follow the default path, but you have to actively choose not to. Nobody is going to stop you from being average. The system will happily let you be. Look, the numbers I just walked you through are hard to hear. I know. They're not a fun watch. They're not the cheery content that goes viral. They're just the reality of where most Americans actually are in 2026. But here's why it matters that you've seen them. Because once you stop comparing yourself to imaginary versions of everyone else, you can start making accurate decisions about your own life. You can stop the lifestyle inflation that comes from trying to keep up with people who can't actually afford their own lives. You can stop financing things you don't need. You can stop measuring your worth against appearances. You can start building, quietly, in the background, while everyone else stays on the treadmill. The quietly wealthy people in this country didn't get there by being smarter than everyone else. They got there by ignoring the noise, by refusing to compete for visible status, by saving when their friends were spending, by investing when their friends were borrowing. They became, in their own way, the people that the broke majority quietly envies, but they did it by walking in the opposite direction from the crowd. So here's the question I want you to carry with you for the rest of the day. Now that you've seen what average actually looks like in modern America, do you want to be average, or do you want to be one of the boring, quiet, unimpressive-looking people who actually has money? Because the path away from the numbers I just walked you through is genuinely available to almost anyone. It doesn't require winning the lottery. It doesn't require a viral TikTok. It doesn't require a stroke of luck. It just requires doing the unglamorous things, saving a little, avoiding bad debt, investing consistently, not chasing the appearances, for long enough that the math works in your favor instead of against you. Most people won't choose this. They'll keep watching the appearances and trying to keep up. They'll keep financing their way into the same statistics I just shared with you. Their grandchildren will hear them complain about it someday. But you don't have to be most people. You only have to see the real numbers clearly and quietly, calmly walk in a different direction from the crowd. That's the entire trick. There's no other secret. I'm Larry. I'm the Money Rebel. And I'll see you in the next video.